Good evening, everybody. How are you? I hope everything is going great for you. I'm having a fantastic day. Lots and lots of things going on, lots of stuff to do. I'm very excited. I'm also super excited to get started on Own Your Story Day 2. Last week we started talking about beginnings, and that was fabulous for me because it really informed how I begin stories for me. I'm learning a lot as I'm sort of working through all of this with you all, so it's very exciting for me to be part of this as much as I am also teaching it. But let's talk about beginnings. First of all, we are going to, at least a little bit later tonight, touch on subjects. In other words, what is the subject of your story? What is the theme of your story? Something for you to start thinking about as you get some of these exercises down. You're going to be developing your own neural pathways, your own ideas about what is it that I want to write about. That will inform how you do things. That will inform, obviously, what you write about, but it will also inform the way you approach your craft as a practitioner. Because we all approach writing, you ask a room full of writers, how do you begin? And you'll get a room full of answers, right? So when we talk about beginnings, it has to be personal to you. But there are some things that you want to think about and look at that are sort of, I hate to say the words industry standards, but the way the craft has changed over time informs how we write today versus how we wrote in the time of writing The Great Gatsby or Pride and Prejudice or farther back. So some ways to begin. Last time, as I said, in the middle of the action. We want to be coming in while something is happening. That makes it exciting. It makes it fast-paced. It doesn't matter whether or not we know exactly what's going on because we'll get caught up pretty quickly and we'll get caught up in the story if something is already happening. So think about that as we're doing the exercises tonight. If we're in the middle of an action, if we're in the middle of something happening, it really changes how we approach the actual, even first sentence. There are lots of people who will tell you the first sentence of any story, whether it's short or whether or not it's the length of a James Michener novel, really makes a difference in how people view the work. There are times, when someone's standing at the bookstore, they'll flip open to the first page and they'll go, and it doesn't grab me, slam shut, put it away. So if the first sentence doesn't come alive for you as a reader, then you probably aren't going to be interested in the book. So the first sentence, I would say even the first couple of sentences, are really crucial in how you introduce the world you've written about to whoever's reading it. The other thing that you might want to do, in addition to in the middle of the action, is the aftermath. If some major thing has just happened and your characters are reacting to that thing having happened, one of my favorite ways of doing this was in the TV show Jericho. Of course, there is multiple nuclear explosions, and what we see in the very beginning is the aftermath of that. How do people begin to react? How do they begin to pick up the pieces? How do they live? What do they do? What are the character relationships as they go on and try to survive after this incredible tragedy and disaster? A third-person description of a setting or a thought. Pride and Prejudice, is one of my favorites, about Mr. Darcy, or some young man, if he is wealthy enough, is going to be in want of a wife, right? So it is a truth universally acknowledged, are the first few words of that novel. And what's interesting is it's automatic, right? It is a truth universally acknowledged. It encompasses everybody. So it's something that's both poignant, as in heartfelt to us, but also universal to anybody who might be reading it, because it says, we're just going to all acknowledge that this is the truth. Whether it's a truth or not, we're going to say it is. And then we slide into the action of the novel. And then one person thinks or speaks. So it was the best of times, it was the worst of times is one of the sort of, ways of starting that novel, that sort of thought process going on and describing what had happened. Or somebody actually saying something, a character actually being in the middle of a quote or in the middle of a story or announcing something is going on, some action. That works if you very quickly then step into telling us where we are. So ouch, that hurt. Okay, that's the beginning. But it could be someone stepped on your toe. It could be that you have just been bumped into by a space pirate in a cantina on a tropical jungle island or on a tropical jungle planet, or your character is a homeless person who's just been stepped on by a high mucky muck Wall Street type, and that begins the action. So there are lots of different things that could be happening there as you go. Okay, now speaking of the person, I've given you a whole bunch of possible ideas. The high Wall Street, mucky muck, homeless person, space pirate, 5-year-old Timmy who just got his toes stepped on. The person. Who is the person? Who are they? Are they male, female, non-binary? Do we know? The faster we know something like that, the more quickly we can hang our hat on the character a little bit. Are they young? Are they old? Do they have likes and dislikes? Do they have quirks? Do they have habits? What are the possible habits that this person might have? Something to think about as you start building a character. And we're going to talk a lot more about characterization, but something to think about there is, who are they? What do they look like maybe? What are their likes and dislikes? And what do they do? And you could say, what do they do for fun? Or you could look at it from the perspective of, what do they do professionally? And that brings us to our first exercise of the evening. We're going to do a quick 2-minute writing sprint. And you know how much I love my little cards. So we didn't bring this in last week. We used objects and locations. Today, we're going to use professions. Can you see that? There's professions. So I am going to choose a profession, and I'm going to ask you to think about developing the character. Who are they? Male or female? Are they young or are they old? Do they have likes and dislikes, habits, anything like that? And related to the profession of the story that you're about to write. One of the things to note that is that you don't want to go, let's say this one happens to be architect. You don't want to go, Sally was an architect. Okay, that tells us that that's her profession, but it doesn't give us an intro into the story, if you will. So if Sally was eyeing the plans for the building that was going to be the tallest building on the planet, that's a different thing, right? So give us her profession or his profession or their profession. Make it part of the action. Make it part of what's going on in the story rather than going, Michelle was a barber. Okay, that's great, but it would be a little bit more interesting if Michelle was cutting the hair of the person who had the longest, who held the Guinness Book of World Record for longest hair or something like that. I don't know. But it has to be something that's part of what's happening in the story rather than just telling us the person's profession. So let me go ahead and shuffle the cards. By the way, a couple of you asked about these cards and whether or not they're available for sale. They will be. Right now, they're not. And when this class that I'm doing now, that you all are doing for free because I love you, I'm doing this for free to develop the class and to see where it takes me and just enjoying sharing this stuff with you. Eventually, this whole thing, Own Your Story, is going to be its own online class. And the cards are going to be available as part of the class, certainly. But for now, if you want the cards, in a little while, maybe in about a week or two, they're going to be available on the izoldat.com website. But for now, we're going to be just using these as part of the exercises and as part of getting ourselves into the writing life. So let me choose a profession. And here we go. I feel like I want a drum roll. I need a little sound effect. Brrr, boom. Musician. Okay, so there we go. Musician is the card. Now, what it is this person is a musician. It could be their profession. It could be something they love to do. It doesn't matter to me. what I'm going to ask you to do is give that thought. Who are they? Are they a young musician, an old musician? Are they male, female, non-binary? Are they on this planet? Are they not? Are you writing a science fiction novel, a fantasy novel? Are they a fairy who, like my books, you know, a fairy godmother who works with musicians? Who are they? What do they like? What don't they like? Are they a musician who's going tone deaf? Oh, now there's some conflict. They might be losing their hearing. Any number of things could be happening. Make it part of the action. So hopefully you are out there and there are people who are participating. Do me a favor. If you are, comment. Let me know. I'm going to actually, for these 2 minutes, I'm going to be hanging out and looking a little bit while you all are writing about musicians. So remember, who are they? Male, female, non-binary, young, old, likes, dislikes, habits, and of course their profession is a musician. So if you're out there, drop me a comment. If you're not participating in writing, if you're writing, write. Now remember what we talked about last time, no editing. If you make a mistake, don't worry, press on. The thing that we want to do is separate the critical, evaluative part of our brain from the creative, woohoo, colorful part of our brain. Let that part hold sway while you take these 2 minutes and write. And on your mark, oh, and by the way, one thing to tell you, if sometimes, sorry, let me restate that. Last week, everybody was commenting, and that was how they were writing their stories. If you do that and you tell me that you want me to give you feedback, I will give you feedback on your story. And that way you can sort of keep growing as a writer. If you don't want the feedback, if you want to just write it, you know, on a piece of paper and pencil, that's totally cool. You don't have to get feedback, whatever you'd like to do, obviously. This is for fun and for free, as I said. So whatever you want to do there, go for it. But if you give me the story, I can give you some constructive critique on what you might do to punch it up or make it flow or other possible improvements. Or it might be perfect and we're ready to go publish it. I don't know. We'll see. So on your mark, get set. Here we go. Pens to paper or fingers to keyboards and go. One minute. Thirty seconds. Ten. And time. All right, let's see. Can I get it done? There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen and others, if you are playing along, if you will, I hope that you are writing either pen and paper at home or writing comments on the video, because that way I can give you notes and feedback. I'm super excited about that. It looks like a couple of you are playing along. That's fantastic. So if you're just joining us and you want to do it, the video will be posted and you can play along live, sort of live, later and do the exercises and still comment, and I will still give feedback up until next week's lesson. How did it all go? I hope it went well. I hope that you are super excited about having done it. It's pretty interesting to start looking at it from the perspective of who are the characters and what are they doing, and does it inform the story to know immediately who the person is. Because one of the things that you're going to do for yourself as you go forward as a writer is you're going to start really wanting to figure some of that stuff out so that you have, again, somewhere to hang your hat. Sometimes, and again, writing styles, if you ask a bunch of writers, you'll get a bunch of answers. Writing styles are all different. For example, I have figured out that I no longer write with fingers on keyboard. I write best by voice-to-text recording. That's how I do it. It works. It's what's working for me, and it's how I'm writing my latest book and getting a good few thousand words in every single day. So that's pretty nice. You're going to have to figure out for yourselves what it is that works for you. This is kind of an enclosed space where you're commenting or writing for yourself in this 2-minute time frame. But as you grow as a writer, you're going to want to figure out what works for you. You know, I think Hemingway used to wake up and write 800 words before breakfast. That was ironclad for him. I wake up at about 5:30 and do a half an hour and do as many words as I can in that half an hour, as much as I can say before I even get out of bed, or the cat gets me out of bed. One of the cats or the dog or somebody is getting me out of bed at 5:30 in the morning. I'm writing. I'm talking. Luckily, my husband is asleep and doesn't notice that I'm talking into my phone at 5:30 a.m. But that's what works for me. What works for you might be 2 o'clock in the morning right before you go to bed, or during your lunch break. Once you know that you have something to say, a story to tell, or a nonfiction essay or something like it, you're going to find that the words are coming and you might as well be writing them down somehow. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about professions, let's talk about names. The thing about names, they can tell us a lot about the person. They can tell us something about whether or not they're perhaps older or younger. They can tell us something about the kind of person that we want them to be. Someone named Charles Emerson Winchester III from the TV show MASH is probably not the guy you go, "Hey Chuck, throw me a beer." And if you do, then there's a tension that's created there because of it. Do you see what I mean? So depending on the names you choose and how you work with them, you can inform the character, the people, the characters and the people in your story by just that choice. When I was naming the story characters in my Fairy Godmother Diaries, I wanted Joanna, my main character, she's not even my main character, my secondary main character, to be someone who was innocent. And so Joanna, I looked up names and found that's what the name means. Evie Songbottom, the main character, was actually named back on LiveJournal, believe it or not. I was talking about writing a book, and my friend Eric Withecue said, "Well, you could do a nom de plume like Starhawk or Silver Ravenwolf or something like that, like they do." And I went, "Yeah, I could. I could totally name myself Evening Star Songbottom and write under that name." And then I went, Evening Star Songbottom. Now that is a name. And that sort of developed this whole huge storyline for me about her being a fairy, and then a fairy godmother, and then because of Songbottom, a fairy godmother who works with musicians. And then we find out more about her, and that she loves a good whiskey, and that she is kind of badass, right? So all of that came out of a kind of a whimsical throwaway line about the name of this nom de plume that I would have. Something to think about is, it could be this accidental thing, and it ended up being a happy accident for me, or it could be something that you really plan out a little bit more carefully. And one of the ones that comes to mind is Scarlet Letter, Nathaniel Hawthorne. Lots of time in ninth grade landmarks and literature class was spent talking about the name Pearl, the daughter's name, that she was uh, conceived and born out of great pain because of what Hester Prynne had to go through, but also that she was as precious as any jewel to her mother. And that was the character. You know, Pearl was a delightful, precious child. So, so Hawthorne didn't name her willy-nilly. He named her specifically to elicit that sort of response. So when you're thinking about a name, I want you to give thought to what kind of ideas you might want to engender and propagate throughout your story based on the names of the people. So I have a whole bunch of names here. I'm going to just read a few of them because I don't have cards for names, I should. I'm going to choose another profession, and I'm going to give you a few names that you might want to name a couple of characters. So you're going to get one profession, and they can both be that profession, or they can be two different professions. You can choose the other one yourselves. And I'm going to give you two names, and you choose the names that I give you, please. Use them as character names. Refer to them or have them speak and say, blah, 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 Izolda said, so we know who's who. And work the profession and the two names into the story. But remember, whichever names I choose, bear in mind that those names can give us some clue as to who the people are, okay? The two names are going to be, here we go, Angelique and Homer. Okay, so Angelique and Homer are going to be having something happening, and one of them is a profession. I'm going to give you one right now. One of them is a secretary. So, the question is, who's the secretary? Is Angelique the secretary, or is Homer? I'm going to give you another 2 minutes. If you're just joining us, we're doing a writing sprint as part of the Own Your Story free online workshop. I want you to enjoy it. Write your story in the comments if you want me to give you feedback on it. Our two characters are named Angelique, spelled Angelique, and Homer, kind of like Homer Simpson. So comment if you want to. Drop a like. Tell your friends. Hopefully you're having a great time. I love doing this. This is so much fun. Drop a comment. Tell me if you're liking it. Drop a like. Tell your friends. It's really fun. And on your mark, get set. 2 minutes, go. One minute. Thirty seconds. Ten, And time. All right, as they say, pencils down. I hope that went really well for you. I know 2 minutes is not a long time, but that's okay because you're just getting started. And what we're trying to do here is to establish some pathways for you to start thinking about the way you want to create stories, and also to start thinking of yourself as a writer. If you sit down for 2 minutes a day and you write part of a story, you're a writer. You have to remember that. It's crucial to remember that because sometimes people go, oh, I write, but that's crap. And what I want you to do from now on is to take every time you start thinking that what you've written is crap or what you want to write is crap, I want you to take that and stuff it down into the garbage disposal and then turn that puppy on, because you're doing a sacred task. You're a storyteller. And that is an incredible thing, and we have to remember that you are creating something that's never been created before. And if you don't tell your story, who will? That's the best way to look at it. Okay, so moving on. The next thing I want you to think about when it comes to characters and starting to think about developing characters when you're writing, and I am going to give you homework this week. When you're writing this week, I want you to start thinking about how to determine who your characters are. So one of my favorite methods of doing this, and if you read writing books, they talk about this a lot, is index cards. Every time I write any kind of a story that has more than 1 or 2 characters in it, I develop character sheets and I keep them on index cards. And these index cards detail the most important parts of who the characters are so that I can always keep myself informed and I can always inform my story with these characters' traits. I'm going to read one to you, and I'm going to show it to you first so that you can see what I've done. Hopefully this will work. La la la. So I don't know if you can see that, but that's the character sheet for the fabulous sleuth, Nancy Drew, that I created. And let me read to you what I said. Nancy Drew, teenager, 18. Tall, lean, strawberry blonde hair, blue eyes, inquisitive, nosy, determined, loyal, dog with a bone when it comes to mysteries. I need to come up with a different saying for that. Greatest wish, her greatest wish is to solve the mystery. That seems to be what she always is about. She drives a light blue convertible, and she's the daughter to a widowed father. She's also a really, really good friend to her friends Bess and George, but that is not as important as it is to know who she is for this purpose. So this week, when you're doing your writing exercises, we'll call them exercises, I don't want to call them homework. When you're doing your writing exercises this week, I'm going to ask you to start thinking about who the characters are and develop some of those character sheets. What are their names? How old are they roughly? What do they look like? Just so that you know, because if you're writing an 85,000 word novel and your character starts out as blue-eyed, you don't want to later on forget that and say that they're brown-eyed, unless they're the kind of person whose eyes change color. Find out the descriptors for them. Are they good people? Are they not such good people? Who are they? What makes them special? And the more you can have something that differentiates one character from the next, the more you will have a real sense of how to develop the characters as they go. But you have to know who they are and where they are starting out in order to really be able to flesh them out later. So if you know where they're starting, you can start building the road, the path for where they will eventually end up at the end of your story. Okay, so now, this week, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I want you to think about your story. Ask yourself the question, what is my story going to be about? Because I am going to ask you to write a story this week. And it can be about something that you choose, topic you choose out of the ether. You could be about something, I'm going to choose an object, a location, and a profession for you in a minute, and you can choose those and write about those. You're going to be asked, I'm going to ask you to write for 5 minutes every single day on this story. If you do that and send it to me, I will get you feedback. Now, as part of the feedback, I want you to tell me what kind of feedback you want. You probably won't be ready for me to tear it apart. You might be ready for some constructive feedback. You might only be ready for some supportive feedback. You might ask me, what can I do to improve my dialogue? Whatever it is you want out of your feedback, you need to start thinking about that. Start just giving a little thought to the kind of evaluation you are ready for, because you're going to need to know that as you progress later on. For now, don't try to edit your 5 minutes every day. Just write. But do be thinking about what kind of feedback you might want on it once we're done. So, your cards for the week are, I'm going to choose an object, I'm going to choose a location, and I'm going to choose a profession. And if you want to write on these this week, spend 5 minutes every day and really time yourselves, because it can be hard to start eking out that time, but once you do, you'll find that you can go for longer than 5. But at the very least, you've done 5, and that means you've gotten something down on paper or on the keyboard or on the screen or into the phone, whatever it is that's going to work best for you. So our object for this week is, I don't like that object because I think we had it last week. I don't know why certain cards keep coming up more often. Ooh, okay. The object is blood. Zoinks. Okay. The location is ocean. Sounds like a mystery story already. And the profession is a therapist. Okay, this has thriller, horror thing all over it. So here we go. We've got an object, a location, and a profession. These are the 3 that we've got going for us. We've got blood, ocean, therapist. Here we go. Let me show it to you. Oops. Let me show it to you this way. Blood, ocean, therapist. So if you want to write 5 minutes a day on this every single day, that'd be great. If you decide you want to write on something else, that'd be great too. The thing to think about is characters. You can choose names out of a hat. You can, ask the computer to generate a random name for you, however you'd like to do it. If you have a story you're already working on, you're certainly welcome to write on it, but spend 5 minutes a day writing, at least 5 minutes a day. Think about the beginning, and each time you come back to it, each day, think about the beginning, because you're beginning a new little bit of the story every single time. So remember, something might be happening. People are reacting to something having happened. Somebody says something, and immediately you want to describe what's going on, right? You don't want to go, ouch, that hurt. And then all of a sudden you're in an ice cream shop and everybody's happy. So make sure there's a logic to it. And you want to be starting to think about who the characters are and what the characters are doing. And especially since one of them is a therapist, that tells us something about them. And see what kind of story you can start building about blood, ocean, and therapist. There are any number of possibilities. It could be, literary fiction. It could be a thriller. It could be a spy genre book. It could be a historical novel or historical romance. It could be pirates. It could be the ocean, could be the space ocean. It does not matter. As long as it is something that means something to you, where you can start writing a story about it. If you decide to bring dialogue into it, what are the people saying? What's happening? I would love that. Remember that the dialogue needs to be conversational plus. Dialogue in writing is not exactly the same as when you're shooting the breeze with friends over a drink. It's going to be a little bit zingier, a little bit zippier. It's going to be a little bit less mundane than what you might hear if you're all, again, sitting around shooting the breeze over a drink. But we're going to talk a lot more about dialogue next time. I just wanted to get you started on this. Remember, ocean, blood, therapist. And I really want to encourage you all to have fun with this. Enjoy writing it. Let your creativity just fly out there and see what you bring back to yourself. And remember, you're a writer. If you are putting words down together, you're already a writer. Now, we're just working on getting you to own your story. Have a wonderful week. I will see you next week, this time, 9 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, for the next session of Own Your Story. And I hope that this has been fun for you. And if you leave your story in the comments, I will give you feedback on that story. Have a fabulous week. Good night, everybody.